All right, let's talk about Popsicles and Armageddon. This is chapters 4 and 5 of Live Your Truth and Other Lies, exposing popular deceptions that make us anxious, self-obsessed, and exhausted. So in chapter 4, Popsicles, we're talking about the lie, you are enough. Now, when I think about the messaging of you are enough, that's one of those things where it's a vague statement. It could be filtered through different worldviews. But here's the point that I want to make in the book. And that's that it really comes down to how you answer the question, are you a sinner or are you inherently good? In fact, I would venture to say that almost all of the lies in this book are built upon that foundation. How you answer the question, am I a sinner or am I inherently sinful or am I inherently good? How you answer those questions will inform the trajectory of your life. It's going to inform how you parent, how you live, how you vote, how you approach everything from education to religion, you name it. Everything flows out of how you're going to answer that question. Think about it this way. Think about the statement, you are enough. In culture, it's like this idea that there's nothing outside of yourself that you need to be made whole or to be made complete. It already exists within you. It's already inside of you. It's just there waiting to be discovered or unleashed or untamed or whatever you want to call it. And so if that's your view, if your view is that you are inherently good and there's inherent goodness, and even in some cases people might think there's inherent divinity already inside of us, then it would be virtuous to just dig down inside of your heart, discover what goodness you find in there, and unleash it on the world. However, if the Bible's right and humans are inherently wicked, if our hearts are deceitful, if we have this fallen nature inside of us, then if we dig down inside of our hearts and just unleash what's inside of there, we're actually going to be unleashing wickedness into the world. So as Christians, this is very countercultural for us because absolutely every message that we are being bombarded with from culture will tell us, you're perfect just as you are. You're enough. You're good. Trust your heart. Trust your feelings. Follow what your instincts tell you. This is the messaging from culture. But the Bible gives a radically countercultural approach in saying, actually, out of the heart flow all manner of immorality, wickedness, and evil. I mean, there could not be two radically more different messages, could there? So as Christians, though, God doesn't leave us there. We know biblically that every human being that's ever been created has been created in the image and likeness of God. And because of that, we have inherent dignity and value, and we have inherent worth. But there's a big but. There is a big but. The big but is that all of us have distorted that image in one way or another through sin. And so that's a problem that needs a fix, right? So when we dig down inside of ourselves, if we tell ourselves, I am enough, but I'm a sinner, then I am placing a burden on myself to fix a problem that I created. There's a great book I recommend for you all to read alongside this one, and it's called You're Not Enough and That's Okay by Allie Beth Stuckey. And in that book, Allie Beth, I quote it in Live Your Truth and Other Lies. I quote her where she says that the self can't both be the problem and the solution. So in Christianity, with a biblical worldview, we understand that God has a great rescue plan for us, right? We have a path of redemption because ultimately we're separated from God through sin. Because of sin, God's holiness says he can't be unified with sin. So we have a problem. There's this separation, right? And so that needs redemption. That needs a reconnection. It needs a reconciliation. And of course, that happens through trusting in the sacrificial work of Jesus on the cross and what he accomplished for us. And so that's a beautiful story if you know you're a sinner. And so that's what we talk about in the Popsicle chapter. Now, what's the Popsicle deal, right? Well, I tell a story about growing up with a, crunchy granola health food mom. And I don't know if you all remember, like, when you would make popsicles as a kid. I don't know how your family made them, but we had to make them healthy. So we would just use orange juice. And they would just be like these orange juice pops. And I'd have to watch all my friends eating their, Rocket Pops and their swirly, whatever those swirly orange things, creamsicles, whatever they might have been. But I just had, an orange juice pop. And so I decided to make some. And one of the little stick things was warped. And so what we talk about in the chapter on Popsicles is that ultimately what's going to bring us the most joy, the most happiness and peace is to realign ourselves with our purpose. We have to understand our purpose. And our purpose is to enjoy God, to be with God, to worship him forever. But that takes some realignment because we're kind of like that warped popsicle stick thingy that doesn't fit in there quite right, and therefore nothing works quite right. So we have to be sanctified. We have to be transformed by the renewing of our mind. And so that's what we talk about in Popsicles. And then we have Armageddon. This is a big lie, guys. This is a big one. And that is that you should put yourself first, right? We see this everywhere in messaging and culture. But it was really interesting. I was recently watching a movie, and it was a movie called 13 Lives. 13 Lives. I'll recommend it to you because it was a really fascinating movie, and it was about the divers, the cave divers who went in to rescue the soccer team that got trapped in a cave in Thailand. You may remember this from a couple of years ago. It made the news. It was all over the news. And these guys risked their lives, and one of them even did end up dying and losing his life on this rescue attempt to rescue these soccer team that was trapped. And why do they make movies about that? They make movies about that because deep down, we all know, because God's law is written on our hearts, that it's virtuous to put others before ourselves, to lay our lives down for other people. And of course, the Bible says that greater love has no man than he lay down his life for his friends. And so I think the cultural message, put yourself first, might feel good in the temporary. It might be something that feels good for a little while, but ultimately we know that it's going to fail us and it's going to fail those around us. And yet, here's the biblical story again. The Bible says that he who refreshes others will himself be refreshed. We know that when we do put others first, when we sacrifice our wants and desires for other people, we reap a reward. There's a reward of depth. There's a reward of peace and joy that accompanies living a life like that. And we follow the example of Jesus in that. So that's what we're talking about when we talk about Popsicles and Armageddon. And the Armageddon piece there, that's a reference to the old movie that I tell a story about in the book. If you haven't seen it, I won't give away too many spoilers, but it's Bruce Willis and Ben Affleck. And ultimately somebody, I won't say who if you haven't seen it, gives their life for the world, to save the world. And we all know that's virtuous. We pay money to go see that. And yet, all of these books and messages all around us are saying, no, you got to put yourself first, right? But as Christians, we know the Bible has such a better story, and that's we follow the example of Jesus who laid his life down for all of us. And that's the real story. And that's the story all the other ones are emulating anyway.